You know, I think I preferred it when this city was at war. Alphonse Crater Crabtree puts into words something all three of them have been thinking. The Civil War might well have plunged Kyras into total anarchy. It might have seen the deaths of hundreds, perhaps even thousands, and reduced large swathes of the city into smouldering rubble. But somehow, this is almost worse. As Crater, Sallow and Trace gaze out over the spires of the city on the chain, there is no outward sign of disorder. From this distance, Kyras appears to be wholly at peace. But that peace has been won at a terrible price. That the Archdominar had declared martial law had come as no great surprise. The growing numbers of Imperial troops on the city streets had, at first, been greeted with gratitude by a population weary of the deprivations of war. Even the presence of the Seekers of Droom, in the form of Enlightenment commissars accompanying Imperial patrols, had raised little concern. More important by far that peace be restored than to quibble over the nature of that restoration. And make no mistake, peace had been established. With the leadership of the machine cult removed, its forces had fallen into chaos, easy prey for the ever-swelling military presence that now flooded the streets. Opportunistic criminal gangs, many of whom had been taking advantage of the opportunity for easy pickings amidst the carnage, had been the next target. Were the massacres that followed excessive? Perhaps, though their efficacy could not be denied. A populace long tired of gangs operating with impunity had shed few tears at their brutal suppression. And if the subsequent ideological purges of the Bluecoats, the military, and the civil leadership that had weeded out the corrupt and any not fully aligned with the Inquisition's divine doctrine had been a little overzealous at times, was that really such a bad thing? Better too much rigour than too little, surely. Of course, the curfews had been unwelcome. Paranoia had steadily grown in direct proportion to the burgeoning network of state informants, and the 3 a.m. raids and endless arrests had sown fear and uncertainty in a citizenry desperate for a return to normality. But surely, Kyserians whispered to one another when they dared, things would improve soon, wouldn't they? Once all the criminals and subversives and heretics had been rooted out and done away with, things would get back to normal. Perhaps some of them even believed it. Until the knock on the door. Hello and welcome to The Lone Adventurer, an actual play solo RPG podcast with me, Carl White. I will be your narrator, your game master, and your guide, as we follow our heroes on their journey into the unknown. For this game, I will be using the Lone Adventurer RPG rule set, as well as a variety of other systems, tools, and tables as they take my fancy. A word of warning, the following scenes may contain mature themes and disturbing imagery. Listener discretion is advised. The adventure continues. Last time on The Lone Adventurer. Marta and the Spider, with the aid of the Heart of Ankara, were able to defeat the demon Satara and send it back to Hell. And against all odds, they were also able to rescue its trapped vessel, Tatiana, the Spider's body-swapped grandmother. Well, would you look at that? We've barely got started with this episode, and already the city has fallen to religious fanatics intent upon implementing Stalinist purges. Who'd have thought it? Not me, that's for certain. I'd started this scene expecting Crater, Sallow, and Trace to be performing some sort of reconnaissance on the current state of the Kyras civil war. I had a vague idea they might try to ally themselves with one faction or another in order to hasten the war's end. But the scene oracle had completely different ideas. Not only did the scene not start as expected, but there was no immediate danger. That left me a little stumped. What was going on then? A trip to the Deep Oracle informed me that tradition, structure, and rules, along with progress, alignment, and confidence, were at play. My instinctive reaction was that the war was over, and the Oracle confirmed that, but with a but. My assumption was that the power balance had shifted somehow, perhaps as the result of some sort of a new alliance. And so I made a list of factions, including the Undying, the Imperial Guard, the criminal gangs, the Bluecoats, the Seekers of Droom, and the Machine Cult, and then I rolled to see who had come out on top. The combo of the Imperial Guard and the Seekers at once put me in mind of the relationship between the army and Soviet political commissars, or the Nazi NSFOs, those fanatical political soldiers responsible for indoctrinating rank-and-file troops with party ideology. From there, it was a very short hop for my Inquisitors of Droom to become the religious vanguard of a Stalinist-style totalitarian takeover. So, profound changes have taken place in Kyras, all as the result of a scene not starting as expected, a few tarot card draws, and a couple of rolls on a d6. A new peril has emerged, this Inquisition of Kyras, which I've added to my story list. And now I need to decide what my PCs are going to do with themselves, given this new state of affairs. My intention had been for this episode to be all about Crater, Sallow and Trace, uncovering secrets and finding ways to end the war. But that requirement has been unexpectedly taken out of their hands, and so I need to have a bit of a rethink. As unpleasant as the current state of Kyras is, I think it has probably become a secondary concern, at least for now. We'll have to see where we go instead in a moment, but I think it's worth pausing for just a second to consider what just happened. A radical, game world-changing event has just taken place, all as the result of a couple of random generators doing their thing. And yet, to me at least, this feels like a logical, natural progression of the fictional reality, the direct consequence of powerful factions vying for power and control. One might speculate that a weakened archdominar, struggling for political survival against increasingly troublesome great houses, as well as the other various players in the civil war, has made a deal with the devil, and allied himself with the Lord Inquisitor. This has succeeded in the short term, but the longer-term implications are only now becoming apparent. Or maybe there's a totally different power play at work. Who can say? Remember this piece of intel the Spider revealed, way back in Season 2, Chapter 8? A bloc formed of Houses Montesario and Tereth, along with the Seekers of Droom and a handful of others, mean to force the Archdominar's hand in the Tanthian campaign. Given that we now know the shapeshifters are somewhere in that particular mix, is this an unseen power play? Time will tell, or maybe it won't, depending upon where the story and the dice take us. This city's gone to hell, Trace scowls, peeling off her rain-soaked greatcoat and glancing around for a chair. Finding none, she drops to her haunches, tucking chilled hands into her armpits. "But it was no fucking rose garden to begin with," Crater adds. The Spider nods, one arm around Tatiana's shoulders. I concur. The military patrols and Inquisition oversight have the citizens wound tight as a drum. We are seeing pervasive and chronic societal fear and universal distrust. The arbitrary nature of near-constant raids has left no one feeling safe. It's a complete breakdown of social norms. I'm not sure what the long-term effect of this will be, but we can be certain they will be profound. The Web, Mina, and Cadmus have convened at the Bell Tower safe house. Despite the unexpected success of the mission to retrieve Tatters, the radical changes that the city has undergone have left them all rattled. Or nearly all. For all the nervous chatter, there is still one among their number who has remained impassive and silent throughout. Mina, still trapped in the form of the Steel Defender Barbican, listens, watches, and waits. It is Valerian who eventually prompts her into action. "So, Mina, are you planning to share your findings with us at some point? I might remind you that I came perilously close to permanent disfigurement, even death, and not least at your own hand in the pursuit of whatever it was you were able to retrieve from that safe. I, for one, would love to find out whether all that risk was worth it." The room goes silent in the pause that follows. When Mina eventually speaks, every ear is expectantly turned to her. Digby's intelligence proved of significant value. The safe contained several dossiers, which I have had the opportunity to examine at length, and the contents have proved enlightening. Valerian rolls his eyes. "And? Come on, Mina, don't keep us in suspense. Enlightening how?" Mina turns coldly, glowing eyes towards him. Each dossier is a detailed report on a figure of significance in the city. History, affiliations, influence. Not a particularly surprising find in the safe of a spymaster, you might think. But, taken together, these people form a network of some of the most powerful in Kyras. A network that, if subverted and unified, would represent an irresistible controlling force over the city. The spider nods slowly. "You're talking about a hit list, aren't you? Targets for the unseen." "Yes," Mina replies, "but it's more than that. These dossiers do represent a list of the persons of influence the unseen had intended to replace, but they hold more valuable information still. The dossiers indicate who has already been replaced. We have the names. For the first time since this whole Shadow War began, we know exactly who our enemies are." Once again, my scene failed to begin as I had planned. I had anticipated the gang getting back together at the safe house, but my oracle informed me that there was something else in play as well. A quick check at the Deep Oracle informed me that this something else was related to matters of completion, fulfillment, enlightenment, optimism, recovery, and choice. It seemed to me that those prompts could mean one of two things. Either Cadmus had identified a way to recover Mina to her body, or that Mina had discovered something important, some exciting intel from the safe. I gave both options 50-50 odds, and the latter one is the one that came up. We now have a list of civic leaders compromised by the unseen, which puts the party very much on the front foot. Finally, knowing who their unseen targets are is a significant step forward. Right now, of course, I don't actually know who those targets might be. To find that out, I'm going to need to make up a big list of all appropriate NPCs, make some rolls, and see who crops up. From there, I should be able to point my party at the bad guys and let them loose. It's tempting to pause for just a moment, though, to consider what other notable plot threads might be worthy of consideration at this point. In a story of this scale and complexity, with so many moving parts, there is always the risk of losing track of some of them. I say risk. In fact, becoming comfortable with the discomfort of imperfection is one of the core skills of the solo RPG GM, and indeed the GM in group games too. When building a living, breathing world, or at the very least the impression of one, the potential for spiraling complexity is enormous. And the temptation to track all of that complexity and to bring everything to a full sense of closure over the course of the tale can be significant. But there is an important truth that must be acknowledged. Any attempt to bring closure to everything is doomed to failure. Let's just take a look at a few of the larger and smaller dangling plot threads that we have open at this point. What is the Great Machine? Why were the Doom Spires created? What is the deal with the Avatar? What is the deal with Heart of Snow? What is Tortimus up to? How did the spider know that Crop created the pathogen? Why did the Unseen want to destroy the League of Free States? What's going on with the Armada? Who killed Baron Montesario? What were scrap pirates doing flying so close to Kyras? And what happened to that demon that escaped into the city way back in Season 2? If I tried to address all of those, two things would happen. Firstly, any sense of meaningful narrative direction and momentum would likely be lost. And secondly, by exploring all of those threads, new ones would inevitably be opened up, which in turn would demand their closure, which in turn would birth new threads, an endless cycle. All of this is to say that it's fine to leave some things unresolved, and even necessary to do so. One of the core principles of this game is to play where the fun is, and keeping that in mind at all times makes it far easier to let go of any completionist urges. Still, it's useful to retain visibility of those dangling threads, because when the Oracle throws you a curveball, it never hurts to have existing story content to refer back to. Let's see what emerges, shall we? The expectant silence is broken by Crater.
Well, what you waiting for? Give us the names, Montesario. I want to know exactly whose face is going to get stoved in.
There are more than a couple of heads that nod in agreement with that statement. In a matter of heartbeats, the mood in the room has shifted from near desperation to one of grim, vengeful purpose. Mina is about to answer when a huge, hulking figure, a man who has been leaning casually and somehow entirely unnoticed against a wall in the crammed little room, takes a step from out of the shadows and into the center of the group. The response is immediate and chaotic. The web scramble to their feet with cries of alarm, clutching for weapons and reaching for magics as the heavily muscled figure smiles at them through a greasy curtain of lank grey hair. Urian tribal tattoos cover every visible inch of his skin.
Rarely does the river of fate flow where expected,
The Doomsinger grins, fixing one eye on the spider.
We spoke of a debt, and now it is time for it to be claimed.
The spider, grimacing, holds up a hand. Hold, hear him out. What is it you want, Heart of Snow? The big Urian cocks his head to one side.
Want? I want for nothing, little spider. I merely follow where the path of fate leads me and help others to find their own paths.
He turns and jabs a finger towards Mina.
Your path is not the one you thought it was, little whisper.
He cups an ear as if listening and grins.
Do you hear it? Do you hear your new fate calling?
Crater steps forward, meaty fists raised.
Anyone else tired as fuck of this arsehole's bullshit?
Again, there are more than a couple of growls of agreement. Wait, Alphonse, the spider interjects hastily. Heart of Snow, I accept that I owe you a debt, but please recognize that tensions are running high. Kindly state your terms succinctly before things deteriorate. The Doomsinger offers a shallow, mocking bow, conceding the point.
Very well. Let us speak plainly. We stand at a nexus point, a significant crossroads on the web of fate. A single misstep here, and all could be lost.
He pivots, staring into Mina's circular, unblinking eyes.
If you reveal all that you know, Philomena Montesario, to all here present at this time, then know this. The web ruptures. Every effort, every sacrifice that has brought you and your companions to this point will have been for naught. You fail. The repayment of the debt I am owed by the spider, and the doom I see to you, Philomena Montesario, is simply this. I ask that you, and you alone, choose what is to be done with the knowledge you hold, and that you tell your companions only what specific details they need to know in order to accomplish their own small part in it.
It should come as no surprise whatsoever that, having just mentioned a load of dangling plot threads, one of them immediately emerges to take centre stage in the very next scene. I started that scene by rolling to see who was on Mina's list based on my existing NPC list, and then fleshing out those results with some logical additions. The intention had been to share those details with the group, but when I positioned my scene start as reviewing the list, I got a yes, but. I asked for some detail, and things started innocuous enough. I drew the 7 of Pentacles reversed, which spoke of impatience, lack of progress, or disillusionment. That was Crater telling Mina to hurry up and spit it out. The second draw, though, took things to a much more interesting and unexpected place. The 3 of Cups relates to friendship, collaboration, or celebration, but it is also the story list card associated with the NPC Heart of Snow. I knew that the Doomsinger had an outstanding debt to call in, and this seemed like a suitably dramatic point for him to step in and claim it. What, though, could he possibly want? Once again, I turned to the Deep Oracle, and this time I drew the Ace of Wands reversed, which meant distraction, delay, or blockage, as well as the Devil reversed, indicating liberation, detachment, and release. This took a little bit of puzzling over, but soon enough I had the gist of it. Heart of Snow didn't want the unseen names revealed here and now. To do so would destroy the web of fate that entangles all of the players. This was some sort of nexus point which had to be navigated carefully if it was to be successfully traversed. Why that might be may emerge through further gameplay, or maybe it won't. We'll just have to wait and see. What we do know is that Mina is now placed in the position of Chief Planner, assigning teams to missions in much the same way that the Spider did back in Series 2. No discussion, no argument, just here's your assignment, off you go. It means, for a short while at least, that I as the player have a fair bit more information than most of my characters have, and more information than you as the listener has. If you're desperate to find out who the unseen agents are that have been subverted, I've captured that info as some of my gameplay notes in the transcript, but have no fear if not. All, I am sure, will soon be revealed. We stand on the cusp of adventure. Ready to take the plunge? Pandemonium predictably immediately ensues. Eventually, Mina leaves them to it, leaving the safe house and climbing up to the bell tower roof, an act that tacitly accepts the Doomsinger's terms. This is down to her. Though she hasn't shared this information with the wider group, she is deeply shaken by just how limited the Unseen's presence in the city has proved to be, or, put another way, how much damage has been wrought by so few. The dossiers showed just 12 unseen agents at work, each adopting a series of different personas, each working their way up the hierarchy of civic power, until now they hold an invisible, near vice-like grip over the leadership of the city. She gazes out over the moonlit rooftops of Kyras, glistening after rain, and tries to bring some order to her spiraling thoughts. Her first instinct, upon hearing his demand, had been to toss Heart of Snow out of the nearest window. But now that she thinks it through, the Doomsinger's advice makes an increasing amount of sense. All it will take is for one member of the team to be compromised, and their plans will fall to ruin. And with enemies who can adopt any form and mimic their targets with such accuracy, how would they ever know? In light of these dangers, protocols will need to be adopted. To begin with, none of the team should ever be left alone, teams of 2 minimum at all times. As Heart of Snow has suggested, operational information will need to be siloed, disseminated at a team level to only those that need it to complete their missions. And if they are to capitalize on the intel they have gathered before the enemy becomes aware of the security breach and compensates, they will need to strike multiple targets in parallel as swiftly as possible. Which leaves her, and her alone, with both the burden of the unseen secrets and the responsibility to determine the best course of action to exploit those secrets, and with very little time to do it.
The instigator's conclusions are incomplete.
Mina's metal body gives an involuntary twitch. Damn it, but she keeps forgetting the Doomspy's avatar is in here with her. Wait, did the avatar just read her thoughts?
As a result of extended exposure, this unit is aware of the instigator's higher cognitive functions. The proposed risk mitigation protocols are adequate. However, the instigator is not the sole bearer of the retrieved intelligence, and not the sole determinant of what is to be done with that intelligence.
This should be about the time that my heart starts hammering fit to burst and I break out into a cold sweat, Mina thinks. Only, trapped here in this steel vessel, cut off from her somatic responses, she is left instead with merely a mild, detached curiosity. How is this happening?
Irrelevant. Inconsequential. Assessment determines highest priority to be assignment of targets and strike teams.
I don't disagree, Mina replies, but don't think I don't have questions. Questions that, once those assignments are allotted, I will be wanting answers to. Not the least of them being, why is it that you're suddenly so interested in assisting? Her only response is a lengthy silence. And Mina can't shake the feeling that the avatar is just as uncertain as she is. Yet another curveball, and yet another thread touched upon from the list of dangling threads that just a few minutes ago I mentioned were too numerous to explore. What I think has happened here is a case of auto-suggestion. By listing the outstanding plot threads, I have brought them up and out of the depths and into my preconscious mind. Not at the forefront of my thinking perhaps, but easily called upon when circumstances demand it. In this case, my scene began with an assumption on my part. Mina was going to consider the missions that she needed to assign. The scene checker agreed, but there was a but, and the Deep Oracle revealed that but to be twofold. Firstly, it had something to do with solitude, introspection, and reflection as represented by the hermit. And secondly, union and connection were in the mix. So, Mina was feeling the isolation that had been imposed upon her, the loneliness of command. That seemed straightforward enough. But at the same time, there was union and connection. Perhaps if I'd not listed out my plot threads immediately before, I might not have considered that connection in relation to the avatar. But with it having been so recently mentioned, it bubbled up to the surface, and it made complete sense to me. Mina is not alone. She shares both her body and her recently acquired knowledge with a machine intelligence of indeterminate gender. The whole mind-reading thing was introduced both as a shortcut to allow for collaboration to take place, and also as a form of plot development. What might happen, I asked myself, if two consciences were forced to reside within a single body over an extended period of time? Might there not, after a while, be some form of bleed between the two, an incremental blurring of boundaries? Might not the avatar start to become just a little more Mina, and if that is so, might not Mina become a little more avatar? This development serves a couple of purposes. It provides some development for the avatar, and it also lights a little bit of a fire under the plot thread I have not mentioned yet. Can Cadmus figure out a way to get Mina out of Barbican and back into her own body? Because if he doesn't get a move on, as we've now seen, Mina may not continue to be exactly Mina for very much longer. All in all, this episode has been an opportunity to take stock. Both in-game, with my characters taking a pause before being flung back into peril, and out-of-game, during which I, as the player, have had some time to discover what we currently know about the party, and about their targets. But have no fear. Unless I miss my guess, this momentary lull in proceedings, and in danger, is about to be supplanted by frenetic chaos, carnage, and catastrophe. That does seem to be the way of things. I hope you'll join me for all that next time. You have been listening to The Lone Adventurer, a solo RPG podcast played, written and performed by me, Carl White. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider telling your friends about it or leaving a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. It really is a huge help. You can follow me on BlueSky at theloneadventurer.bsky.social. Email me at theloneadv@gmail.com or follow my blog at carlillustration.wordpress.com. You can find show notes for this episode and all others at theloneadventurer.podbean.com, where I include any links mentioned in the episode, as well as mechanics information. I also include a link to a full episode transcript. The story will continue in the next episode of The Lone Adventurer. Thank you for listening.